everyone, I'm Ginger Balch from In Sheep's Clothing Yarn Shop in Torrington, welcoming you to another episode of Focus on Fiber. Now, last episode we did needle felted pumpkins, and today we're going to be doing knitted pumpkins. So get ready, get your double pointed needles out, and here we go. So as you can see here, we have what I think are the absolute cutest little pumpkins. Look at these guys. They're chubby, they're just so cute. They've got the little ridges. And what I really like is, look at the bottom of that. What I did was I used multicolored yarn for the pumpkins. So I didn't even have to switch. I didn't have to do stripes or anything. The yarn did all the work for me. Now, if you do like the solid ones, we also have our typical little orange pumpkin. And this is out of wool and silk. So we have this little luxurious pumpkin. And then the little tweedy yellow one. And I just love the white. I've been seeing all these little white pumpkins, and I just think that's adorable. Now, if you want to do the multicolored, believe it or not, these two pumpkins right here with those colors, okay? See how different they look? That was done with one skein of yarn. So as you knit with one skein and you finish your pumpkin, you pick up the skein, which starts in a different place in colors, and you get a totally different pumpkin. And I think that's so cool. Now, I know some of these pumpkins, this was a little chunkier weight yarn. I know some of these pumpkins, okay, maybe the color's not totally realistic, but they're too cute. They're just too much fun. Now, the pumpkin that I've actually been working on right now is even a little bit different because it has purple in it. But I know I'm getting to the orange, and the orange is going to be up in the top where I'm going to be able to really see it. So, okay, the bottom's purple. That's okay. It's still fun. I'll show you how we're going to get going making the pumpkin. So I'm going to, let's see, we're going to start with the fun color. And this one was actually, see, if I kept on going, there's the yellow and the pink. That was from this pumpkin here. And this pumpkin pattern is available on Ravelry. And I'll give you more information later about the pattern, the link to get to that. So what you want to do is, and if you really hate double points, you can do these on 2 circular needles or 1 big long circular needle if you want to do it that way. But you know I like my double pointed needles. So I'm going to leave a tail, and then what I'm going to do is I'll do my slip knot, and then I'm going to cast on 10 stitches. Okay, and I'm doing long tail cast on. So let's see, we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and about a 10-inch tail. Now, I did a slight change to the pattern. The pattern originally tells you to knit across, and then you start your increase row. Well, the thing is, when you do that, you're going to have a hole at the bottom of your pumpkin. I'm going to do the row of increases right away because it just, as far as I was concerned, when I go to close up the hole, it closes it up a little bit easier. So we're going to do it my way today. So we're going to, what we have to do is increase in each stitch across and put the stitches on our needles as we go. So I'm going to knit into the front and the back of stitch 1. And the other thing that you want to make sure is that you're working off the ball of yarn and not your tail. I do that all the time. Okay, so that's 1 stitch. And then we're going to increase front and back of the second, front and back of the third, front and back of the fourth. We have an odd number of stitches, so we have to break them up. So we do 4 stitches, which actually becomes 8. Take my second needle, and now I'm going to increase front and back onto the second needle, 1 stitch, 2 stitch, and 3 stitch. Drop that one. Third needle. Don't freak out. If you don't do double pointed needles, it's really pretty easy. There are easier ways to do this too, but we're just doing this way today. Okay, so increase front and back. First stitch. Second stitch. And third stitch. Okay. And now what we want to do is we want to join the first needle with the third needle to make our round. So I'm just going to take the last needle and the first needle, and we just want to make sure it's not twisted. And I want to get my yarn. Here we go. So there's my first and my second needle, and there's my middle needle right there. And now what I'm going to do is, so when you're increasing like this, you're going to do an increase round and then knit a plain round, no increasing. Increase round, plain round. So I'm on my plain round, and it's also going to join our round. So I'm going to knit into the front of the stitch like we normally would. So I'm going to knit across these stitches. Okay. And I know these needles are probably making you a little crazy, but there we go. So we went across our first needle and keep our tail out of the way so we don't accidentally pick that up and knit with it. And now I'm going to do my second needle. All the way across. So we'll have 8 stitches on the first needle and then 6 on second and third needles. And what you can do when we get to the end of this needle is you want to keep track of where you begin and end. So we just ended, and now so that was our third needle, and this is our first needle. Now there's my tail, so that tells me that's my beginning of the round. You can also take a marker and put a marker. I don't do that right away because it's very easy for me to see where the tail is. But once you start knitting and you get further up in your piece, you might want to go ahead and attach, like on this piece right here. You might, okay, so I can look and I can still tell. There's my tail, and that was my beginning. But what I might want to do now is take my marker and put it on the first stitch. And I'm using a split marker. Put my marker there so that I know as I'm going around, that was my beginning and that was my end, because you need to keep track of that. Okay, so now we got past our first plain round. So now the second round, we have to do another increase. But this time, instead of increasing in every stitch, we're going to knit 1 stitch and then increase by knitting into the front and the back of your second stitch. So you're always going to be knitting 1, increase, knitting 1, increase, knitting 1, and then increase. And you know that you have it right. I like to have it set up so that I always increase on my last stitch on the needle, so that when I turn, and it just makes life easier just knitting on the double pointed needles, that on my next stitch, I know I'm going to be knitting, and I don't have to worry about increasing. So my first stitch is going to be knit 1, and then increase second stitch. Knit 1, increase. Knit 1, and then again, my last stitch is going to be an increase stitch. And then this is going to be my third and last needle for my increase. I'm going to be increased. Sorry, I keep doing that. Knit 1, increase. Knit 1, increase, front and back of the stitch. Knit 1, and then increase, front and back. And that's our last increase for that round. And then on our next round is just going to be what they call a knit even round, where we just knit around and don't do any increasing at all. And we're going to keep doing this until we get, as you can see on the pumpkins, we have a knit 4, purl 2, knit 4, purl 2 rib. And the way that we get to the, well, we keep increasing until we get to that point. Oops, here we go. Let's see, plain round. Almost lost track of where I was. And of course you can, I mean, after a while, I mean, I've made so many of these pumpkins, the pattern is just seared in my brain, and I can just do this without even thinking. But sometimes when you can't, when you're not even thinking, you make a mistake because you're just on autopilot. But they're just so fun to make because they're so easy. You can literally make a couple in a night, while you're watching TV. And let's say one more round, and then we'll do an increase. I don't know, there's something soothing too about the clacking of the wood needles. I can't say enough about my double point needles. I just enjoy working with them. So now you've done increase in every stitch, knit around, increase, knit 1 stitch, increase. So now we just keep with that pattern. So this time, instead of knitting 1 stitch, we're going to knit 2 stitches and then do our increase. Because it's a gradual, okay, so knit 2 more stitches and then increase in our 3rd stitch. You don't want to do all your increases in one time because you will, see, I'm talking and can't talk and do this at the same time, increase, because you want to have a nice flat bottom on your on the pumpkin instead of all gathered up. And so let's say we're going to knit 2 and increase across all these stitches. So we'll just finish up this round. So knit 2 stitches, increase, knit 2, increase, knit 2. See, and you always know you're right because I always end with an increase. Because every once in a while I'll kind of lose track of when was I doing 2 or was I on 3? What was I doing? And sometimes I could just count it out. And when I end with an increase at the end, okay, that's the round that I'm on. Of course, you could do the simple thing and keep track of it on a piece of paper or one of those little clicky things. But that's just one more thing for me to have to do. And I'd rather just have to, maybe have to think about where I am rather than have to actually keep track of it. Okay, this is going to be the last one for that. Ending again with an increase at the last stitch. And there's our tail, or you could put your marker there. And now the next round is just going to be a knit around. And so I'm going to stop at this point because we're going to pick up where I was working before. I'm going to just set this down here because now this piece here, I've already gotten to the point where I increased to the point where I have 4 stitches and then 2 purls in between. So I'm just going to keep, at that point, I have to do no more increases. I just continue in that pattern of knit 4 and then purl 2, which gives us our little rib, which gives us the nice little indentations for our pumpkin. And we're going to keep doing this until, I believe the pattern said, like I said, I should have this absolutely memorized. I think it's, I can't remember how many inches, but if you check out the pattern, you can find out for sure. It's either 3 or 4 inches from the beginning. So I still have a little bit more to go on this. But what I want to do is after I get to my, we'll get around this round here, I'll show you the decrease part. So this will be like a really short, squat pumpkin, or I'm going to have to take it out and rework it after. This one here I made a little bit taller. I could have probably He's a little different shape for a couple different reasons, but I could have stuffed him a little bit more. But once you get up to the point of decreasing, and you've done your decreases, then what you do is you're going to close them up at the bottom here, and that's where this tail comes in. So you're going to just go through those stitches, the cast-on stitches, and pull it together. You still have that tail, because then that's how you get your shaping for the pumpkin. So let's see. I just want to get to this round here, and then I'll show you the decreases. 2 more rounds to go. But it's amazing how fast that this goes. And the other thing that you can do too is you can go from different, I think the pattern actually called for DK weight yarn. I think I used a little bit heavier yarn to start out with, like a heavy worsted weight yarn. You can even do like this pumpkin was done on a chunky weight yarn. So see, I'm doing I think they actually did a 5 or 6 needle. And this I'm doing, I don't know, I think maybe it's a 9 or a 10 needle. So your pumpkin will come out a little bit bigger. So just by changing your yarn and your needles, you can adjust the size of your pumpkins. And the more taller that you knit, you can get a taller pumpkin. Or the shorter, you can get a squatter pumpkin. Okay, so we're going to get to around here. Now, what we're going to do at this point to decrease is we're going to, oh, there's my marker. We still have one more section to go here. I don't want to mess this up at this point. So we'll just get across here. I'm doing this without glasses, so it's kind of one of those things. It's muscle memory at this point. I can't really see what I'm doing. And you could feel it too. You could feel where the pearls are. I think that's how some people can knit in the movie theater without looking at what they're doing. Okay, so we're at our marker, our beginning of the round, and this is going to be our decrease round. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to knit across the 4 stitches that we had. And when we get to the purl 2, what we're going to do is we're going to purl those 2 stitches together. So that's going to be decreasing, I believe it's 3 stitches on each section. So knit 4, and then we're going to purl 2. And then we're going to knit 4. No, it's more than that. Knit 4, purl 2. Well, this is our big section, so I think we have 4 on this one. And then we're going to knit 4. And like I said before, with our increase at the end, we're going to have decrease at the end of our needle. So we knit those 2 together. And we're going to work that all the way around. So we do our knit 4, purl 2 together. And then like we were doing for the increasing, after this decrease round, we're just going to do a plain round, which would mean then that we're going to knit 4, purl 1, knit 4, purl 1. And then the next round after that, well, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. I want you to keep up with what's happening here. Of course, when you have the pattern in front of you, it'll just be that much easier to do. But it just makes so much sense. It's just such a easy pattern because it follows this nice regular pattern. Very well written pattern too. They did a great job on this. Purl 2, knit 2, knit 4, and then purl 2, and then we're going to do our plain round. There we go, and there's our marker telling us that now we can just do what's in front of us, what we actually see, which is going to be knit 4, purl 1. Just finish that stitch. I almost forgot. Oops. No, purl 1. Purl 1. I think it's going to be a cool looking pumpkin, even with the purple in it. I like it. Okay, so instead of having you watch me continue to knit, so what we're going to do is after this plain round, we're going to, instead of knitting 4, we're going to knit 3, and that last knit and purl, we're going to knit together. And you're going to do that all the way around to decrease, and then you go to a plain round. And what you just keep doing is you'll keep decreasing 1 stitch as you go around. You'll start out with your knit stitches, and then the last 2 stitches you'll work together until you end up with knit 1, knit together all the way around, plain round, and then your final round will be knit 2 together all the way around, which is going to give you this little hole. And then, like I said, once you have closed this up, you're going to stuff it from the top. And you can use either batting, or what I did, because I figured I'm using wool to start out with, and I'm kind of a purist. So if I'm starting out with wool, I'm going to stuff it with wool. I'm not going to use something not natural inside of it. So I actually had some raw wool that had been washed, and I kind of teased it all up and stuffed it in there. And then you stuff it as firmly as you want. You don't want to go too firm, because what's going to happen is once you have it stuffed, you're going to take this tail that you have and you're going to put it on a tapestry needle. And actually, I guess I could show you what I would do. I could show you how I did it on one of the pumpkins that's already here. Get a tapestry needle. So much stuff. These are great bags, by the way. They hold a million things. There we go. Tapestry needle. Okay. So what I would do, and the pattern's very, very clear on how to do this, is, and I'm just going to take a piece of yarn and just pretend how I did it with one of my pumpkins. So this was say this is the bottom of the pumpkin, okay? And that was my tail. So what you're going to do is you go through and you come up the top of your pumpkin like this, okay? And then you're going to just grab a little bit and go back down where you started, or close to, and come back down through. And that's where you make your shape. Because this thing was tall like this. And what you do is you pull it down to where you want it to be. And then you go from the bottom. Actually, this is good because it's contrasting color and you can see exactly what I'm doing. Now I'm going to go across so you can't see it, like that. Okay, and now I'm going to grab just a little bit, and I'm going to come up. They actually use markers in the pattern, but I'm going to come up next to it, come through, grab just a little bit, and go back down again, next to where I was. And you're going to do this in 4 different places. And when you pull it down, it pulls your pumpkin into place, and you just kind of, you know, figure out where you want it. It can be taller, it can be, you know, the more you pull on it, the squatter it's going to be. And you get your cute little shape like that. And then what you do, I'm trying to remember, oh, and then there's also, when you go to do the stem, you don't sew the stem on. You have some stitches that are left from the top of the pumpkin, and you knit. There's a special way that you knit back and forth on that. Or you could do a little I-cord, kind of creates an I-cord. And you knit up. And you can use a contrasting color, or like what I happened to do with the pumpkins, it was changing color anyway. So there's the top of my pumpkin. And then you fasten that off, and then you're all set. But it's just such a great little pattern, and it works up so beautifully. But you can use solid colors for this. You can use your great multicolors and get really, really interesting pumpkins and you can generally get more than 2 out of a skein of yarn like that. And then just make a whole bunch of different ones. Be great for a display on your mantle, on table, give them away as gifts. Kids, my granddaughter came over and she saw these and she thought they were just the best fun thing, and she was playing with them and squishing them and just having a great time with them. But everybody that sees them, it just makes them smile. I hope that you are going to take a chance on making some pumpkins yourself, and try a whole bunch of different yarns. Get a whole, if you have little scraps, that's great. You can make stripes if you want to. But I would definitely take the time, because once you start to make one, you want to see what another color is going to look like. And well, what will it look like if I do this color? So before you know it, you're going to be off and running and just making oodles of pumpkins. So I want to thank you for taking your time to watch the show today. And I hope that you spend some time making some pumpkins with your friends or family, little ones, and have a great time doing that. And as always, it's important to have a focus on fiber. See you again. Thanks.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.